You're good at your job. Maybe even great. And somehow, that's exactly why you're stuck. You've been at this company for 3 years. Maybe 4. And somewhere around the 18-month mark, something shifted. The energy changed. Your manager started giving you feedback that felt off. Not wrong enough to confront. Not wrong enough to quit over. Just off. You started working harder to compensate. Which, of course, made things worse. And now here you are. Sitting in another meeting, watching someone less qualified get praised for work that sounds suspiciously like the idea you floated 2 months ago. You smile. You take notes. You tell yourself this is temporary. It isn't. And the terrifying part? The trap was never built with walls. It was built with your own intelligence. Hello lovelies, welcome to Delaney versus the system. Here's what most smart professionals believe. They believe that if they work hard enough, competently enough, long enough, the system will eventually recognize them. That their output will speak for itself. That the right people will notice. That the injustice is temporary. They believe that they are in a bad situation they can eventually work their way out of. This belief feels logical. It feels mature. It feels like patience. It is none of those things. It is the first layer of the trap. Because here's what nobody tells you about smart people in toxic workplaces: your intelligence, the very thing that makes you valuable, is also the thing that keeps you frozen. Not because you're naive, but because you're too good at rationalizing what's happening to you. You analyze the problem from 16 angles. You find 12 possible explanations that don't require the uncomfortable conclusion. You tell yourself, maybe I'm reading this wrong. Maybe it's just politics. Maybe if I adjust my approach. And while you're doing all of that elegant, high-functioning thinking, the trap gets 3 inches tighter. Let's talk about what's actually happening. Toxic workplaces don't survive because they're full of bad people. They survive because they're perfectly engineered to retain high performers. Think about that. The people leadership is most afraid to lose are the same people they're most likely to exploit. Here's how the system works. When you're genuinely good at your job, management identifies you early. Not to promote you. To depend on you. There's a difference. One is investment. The other is extraction. You become the person they call when something breaks. The person who gets the messy projects nobody else wants. The person who's quietly handed extra responsibility, without extra title, without extra pay, because you'll handle it. Because you always handle it. And every time you do, you teach the system that it can take more from you. Meanwhile, something else is happening in the background. The people getting promoted around you aren't necessarily more talented. They're more politically legible. They make noise. They manage perception. They align themselves with whoever controls resources. They understand, consciously or not, that at the corporate level, visibility matters more than volume. You're working. They're maneuvering. And the system rewards maneuvering. But here's the part that really digs in: the toxic workplace understands something about smart people that smart people don't fully understand about themselves. Smart people hate unfinished problems. You haven't fixed this yet. You haven't figured out the right approach. You haven't gotten the recognition you've earned. And leaving before you do? That feels like quitting. Like failure. Like letting them win. So you stay. And you try harder. And the gap between your effort and your reward keeps widening, but slowly enough that it never quite triggers the alarm. That's not an accident. That's the architecture. Let's get more specific. Because this is where it starts to feel uncomfortably familiar. You're in a one-on-one with your manager. They're giving you feedback. The feedback is vague, something about executive presence or stakeholder management or strategic thinking. All things that sound like professional development. All things that feel impossible to measure. All things that can be used, indefinitely, to explain why you're not quite ready for the next level. The goalposts don't move suddenly. They move gradually. Just far enough that you can almost reach them. Just close enough that stopping feels irrational. Psychologists have a name for this. It's called the escalation of commitment. The more you've invested in something, the harder it becomes to walk away, even when the evidence clearly says you should. Every year you stay, every project you deliver, every sacrifice you make quietly raises the psychological cost of leaving. 3 years in, you're not just working a job. You're protecting an investment. And toxic systems know this. Not always consciously. But structurally. Institutionally. They've watched hundreds of people before you do the same calculation. Stay a little longer. Fix one more thing. Wait for the next review cycle. And here's the worst part. The validation comes. Just enough. Just often enough. A glowing performance review. A shout-out in a company meeting. Your manager telling you privately that they're going to bat for you. Just enough warmth to reset the clock. Just enough recognition to make leaving feel premature. That's not generosity. That's retention strategy. Now we need to talk about something most career content completely avoids. The trap isn't just external. The trap is psychological. And it runs deeper than you want to admit. Smart people, particularly high-achieving, conscientious, emotionally intelligent people, carry a specific vulnerability into every workplace they enter. They believe that outcomes should be fair. Not naively. Not blindly. But at some foundational level, there is a belief that good work should produce good results. That honesty should be rewarded. That systems, however imperfect, should trend toward justice over time. This belief makes you a good person. It also makes you easy to exploit. Because the moment you're in a system that doesn't operate on fairness, a system that operates on power, loyalty, and political alignment, your instinct is to work harder. To prove yourself through output. To earn what you believe you deserve. And every time you do that, instead of building influence, managing perception, and protecting your own positioning, you fall further behind. Not in skill. In power. There's also something called sunk cost identity. It's more dangerous than sunk cost thinking. This is when your self-image becomes tied to the job. You've defined yourself as the person who handles the hard problems. The person who doesn't give up. The person who finds a way. Leaving starts to feel like a betrayal, not of the company, but of who you believe yourself to be. The toxic workplace didn't create that identity. It just learned to live inside it. So what do you actually do? First, stop performing competence for an audience that isn't scoring for it. This sounds cynical. It isn't. It's just accurate. In a toxic system, raw output rarely drives advancement. What drives advancement is whose perception of you is most strategically valuable, and how well you're managing it. Before you take on another project, ask yourself, who will know I did this? Who will attribute this to me specifically? If the answer is nobody important, you're adding to your exploitation, not your advancement. Second, study who actually gets rewarded. Not who deserves to. Who does? Watch them carefully. What do they say in meetings? What do they not say? Who do they align themselves with? What do they avoid doing? This isn't about becoming cynical. It's about reading the real rules of the environment you're inside. Third, get honest about the architecture. Some toxic workplaces can be navigated. Some can't. The ones that can't be navigated have a specific tell. The people at the top benefit directly from keeping the system the way it is. If the dysfunction is profitable for leadership, if your confusion, your overwork, your patience is serving someone's agenda, no amount of smart maneuvering changes the fundamental math. You can't win a game where the other side controls the scoring. Fourth, rebuild your leverage quietly. Not loudly. Not with ultimatums. But systematically. Update your network. Reconnect with people who knew your work before this job. Document your accomplishments in language that travels, outcomes, numbers, impact. Make yourself visible in your industry, not just your company. The goal is not to leave tomorrow. The goal is to make leaving possible, so that when you finally decide to go, you're moving towards something, not just running away. That distinction matters more than you think. People who leave towards something recover fast. People who leave to escape often end up in the same trap somewhere new. Fifth, decide what you're willing to lose. Because at some point, staying has a cost that doesn't appear on any performance review. It appears in your health. Your confidence. Your ability to trust your own judgment. Toxic systems are very good at making you doubt yourself slowly, through constant subtle feedback that something is off with you, rather than with the environment. The longer you stay inside that fog, the harder it becomes to see clearly. Here's what nobody tells you about smart people in toxic jobs. The trap doesn't look like a trap. It looks like a project you're almost finished with. A promotion you're almost ready for. A situation you've almost figured out. It looks like patience. Like professionalism. Like not being a quitter. It feels like being this close. But close is the mechanism. Close is how it works. Close is what keeps the most capable people, the ones leadership can least afford to lose, exactly where they are. You weren't trapped because you were weak. You were trapped because you were good enough to believe the system would eventually see that. And that belief, reasonable, earned, intelligent, was the only wall that was ever necessary. Because here's the final truth about toxic workplaces, they don't need to force you to stay. They just need you to keep thinking that leaving would be giving up. And by the time most smart people realize the difference between patience and being used for it, they've already given the best years of their career to a system that was never going to give them back what they were worth. The question was never whether you were smart enough. The question was whether you were watching the right thing. Now you are. Thank you lovelies for watching to the end.